So we always knew that we wanted to be parents. I am the oldest of 6 siblings. Spent most of my life taking care of children, and I absolutely love it. But I also felt like it was a calling that God had placed on my heart. Like I just always knew, I just always knew I was going to be a mother.
And I'm the oldest of one child. I'm an only child. But I lost my father when I was in grade school. And when my dad passed away, I spent several years wondering how God was going to redeem that really hard situation. And I thought that one way he might do that was with my own kids. And so, yeah, I also, when we first started dating, we both discussed this a little bit, and we knew that parenthood was something that would be in our future, a long ways in our future, but potentially was something we both desired. We got married in 2015, and then we knew that raising a family would be kind of costly. At the time, we were working our first jobs out of school, and so we decided that we would wait a couple years to start attempting to start a family. And so we waited, and then the time came. Danielle was working on her master's degree at the time, and we had planned it so that she would be finished with her master's degree right before that child was born. And everything was going according to plan. As a matter of fact, just right when we started trying to start our family, well, we got pregnant. And then
We were excited and nervous and scared because we didn't think it was going to happen that fast. But we went in for our first ultrasound and were told that there was no heartbeat and we had lost the child. And obviously that was very hard. And it kind of, if anybody's ever gone through this, the first time it happens, you realize that pregnancy test does not equal a baby. And that is a hard lesson to learn. I'm sorry. I didn't think I was going to cry, honestly, but that's a hard lesson to learn, and it's a lesson that continued to follow us for the next several years.
so after our miscarriage, we were assured by doctors and nurses that it would likely, the wait would probably not be too terribly long. We would probably, you know, be pregnant again by the end of the year, and it would only take a few months, and then months turned into years, and we started uh postponing, various vacations and trips that we wanted to take because we just knew that within the next few months we would get pregnant. um but that didn't really happen. And so we kept waiting, and let's see, where am I? Oh yeah, we were putting life on hold um because we just knew that it was going to happen.
And so about 2 years after the loss of our first child, I felt something that was not right. I felt a pain in my abdomen that hadn't been there before. And so I went to the doctor, and several doctor's appointments later, I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, and we had surgery scheduled for the spring. The surgery was very successful, and the doctors assured us again, no problem. We don't see any reason why, especially after the surgery, you guys wouldn't be able to conceive a child. And so that was continuing our plan. We just kept thinking, okay, we'll be pregnant in, a few months or, next month and then the next month.
And so we were still putting life on hold because we just knew that now that Danielle had had this surgery, things were going to change, and God was certainly going to give us this child that we had been waiting for years and years and years. And then Danielle received a word from the Lord. Um, I should just mention, I did not get this message, but Danielle got this message.
So we were at a communion service at All Nations, and we were singing a worship song. I don't remember anymore what song it was, um, but I was just reaching out and saying, God, you put this calling on my heart, and you won't let me fulfill it. Why? Can you let me know? Can you take the calling away if it's not what we're supposed to do? This is torture. Being told to wait, but being told that I don't know if it's going to happen or not. And I heard the Lord speak to me. He spoke extremely clearly, and he said, be patient. It wasn't a no, it was be patient. And so then I knew. I didn't know when or how it was going to happen, but we were going to be parents.
It's at this point in the story that I should probably say God has done this more than once in our marriage. When we were going to buy our first home, he told Danielle that the house that we were about to buy was not, in fact, our house, and we should not buy that house. And then we ended up waiting another year after that to buy a house. But I just knew that God spoke to my wife, and so I didn't want to do anything that would show him that I wasn't paying attention. But meanwhile, I still, like I said, I didn't feel that he was speaking to me. But I was just like, all right, God, um, I'll wait, I'll stay here because, kind of like Peter, where else am I gonna go? Right. And so I just was willing to stick it out. But after years you start to lose hope a little bit. And we decided that we were gonna stop putting life on hold. And so we decided to start going on those trips that we had been pausing for years and years. And so one day we were over at our friend's house, and my wife got to talking to my friend's wife, and she was like, hey, you guys should definitely go to Europe. And Danielle and I hadn't talked about that much. But before I knew it, we were planning a trip to Ireland. When we got to Ireland, what happened?
So we were going to visit some friends that we hadn't seen in a while. And when we arrived, they let us know that they were expecting. And it hit different a little bit because we knew that they had gone through a loss. And again, if you've ever experienced a loss before, when you hear that somebody has made it through that season, it is elating, right? It's like, oh, we can do it too. Like that might be us next. But at the same time, it was still a trip that we were taking to try to get away from it a little bit. And it was right there in our face. We couldn't really escape it. But I also want to go back a little bit to say that, through the years, people would ask us, well, have you thought about adoption? Have you thought about fostering? Because, everybody thinks adoption is just so easy. And we had talked with we had adoption in our families. We talked with lots of other people that we knew that had adopted or grew their families in unconventional ways. And we still felt like it was a calling on our hearts to continue to try, but also continue to wait and not force anything.
But we had this desire to nurture, something. And so we were like, all right, let's take it into our hands and maybe we'll adopt a puppy. And so we got a really cute lab pit bull mix, and he was very energetic and super cute, except for he was also reactive to children. And so he attempted to bite several children, and luckily he never had his way. But we we knew that there were children in our future, and we were in community with a lot of kids, and so we had to rehome him. But from that, I learned the lesson that just because I wanted something on my time, it didn't necessarily mean that it aligned with God's time.
So as we were having those conversations about maybe adoption is the way that we grow our family, it doesn't seem to be working for us any other way. We agreed that we didn't want to force it, like the dog situation. And what I had kind of told Jon was, I'll know it's real. I know it's what God wants for our family when a baby literally walks through the door and somebody says, here's the baby. Like it needed to be that clear.
And that brings us to January 13th, 2025. I woke up feeling melancholic and just kind of depressed. Um, at that time, had been in the, let's see, I had been in S&P for a year, I think. And so I that week was going on campus for a week long intensive, and I woke up and I still wasn't feeling right. So Danielle and I did our devotion time, and then I said, "Okay, I wasn't feeling better after that. Lord, let me pray." And so I sat down. And I said, "God, I'm feeling really spent. Please restore my joy. I'm feeling tired." And admittedly, the seminary campus is a pretty liturgical place, and I am sometimes somewhat intimidated by high church places. And so I got done praying, and 15 minutes later, I lost my job of 7.5 years. And I was like, that was the response to please restore my joy? Now what am I gonna do? And so it seemed like he was like, well, go to class. Well, I stopped, what I was doing, and then I left and I went to class. I told some of the guys in my cohort, and they were immensely supportive. And I was learning things, and it really did help kind of take my mind off of what had just happened. And the following day, I had had such a good time in class. I called my wife to tell her about the day that I had had, and I talked for a little bit too long, like I'm doing right now. And I said, then I asked, how was your day? And her response was,
I had gotten a call from my mom's best friend of many, many years, who will call my godmother from here on out. And she called me, and she kind of is one of those people that'll hem and haw and take about a few minutes to get to the point. And so she was doing that, and I was like, what is it? What's going on? And she goes, so there's a baby. And I said, what do you mean there's a baby? And she goes, there's a baby. I was like, I'm going to need a little bit more than there's a baby. And so she goes into her cousin had just given birth at Barnes the week before, and her cousin was not fit to take care of a child. And they were running out of people to take the child. They had gone through family members and things, and there was nobody. And she said, I was thinking about you and Jon, and would you want to take care of this baby?
and I was like, you just let me speak for 15 minutes. That's like, why didn't you cut me off? Anyway, and so it was the week that we'd had a lot of snow and ice, and I was headed home to clean our driveway because some of the guys from my cohort in the program were coming over the following day. And I do some of my best praying when I'm doing something else. I'm kind of like half distracted. And so I was like, all right, Lord, what should we do? When Danielle told her godmother Jon just lost his job, her response was, cool, now he has some time to take care of a baby. And I was like, excuse me, cool? I had this job for almost like the better portion of a decade, and now it's cool. But I prayed and I said, God, is this what you're leading us to do? And I just kept feeling like, he was saying, well, yes. And then I remembered that we had said that the answer to the question about fostering or adoption, it had to be pretty clear. And somebody would have to come to us and say, well, here's a baby. Well, I mean, when Danielle talked to her godmother, she said, there's a baby. And I was like, I'm not going to quibble over the letter T. That pretty much seems like here's a baby. And so I was like, I'm in. I called her back less than 10 minutes later. She was taking her a while to get back to get home because of the ice and the snow. And she's like, okay, I'll let her know in the morning. We'll sleep on it, but I'll let her know tomorrow. And so that week, like I said, I was busy at school. And so I really couldn't have much to do with directing the way the next couple steps took place. There was a caseworker in our house later that week, and they had to make sure that we weren't serial killers. Um, and then we weren't guaranteed placement, but the following week was Dr. King Day, and we were trying to prepare our home for potentially a new baby.
So I had gotten the original phone call on a Tuesday, and then the following Tuesday, I get a call from the caseworker after paperwork had been completed and background checks had been done and classes had been taken, and she said, "You got to do one more, home walkthrough, one more home visit." And I said, "Okay, when can we do it?" "Friday morning." Done. So we're spent the next few days, next few evenings getting our house ready. She comes in, she walks through the house for approximately 30 seconds. And then she says, "Okay, when do you want her?" And I said, "What do you mean, when do you want her?" She goes, "You can get her tonight or tomorrow morning. Either way is fine."
So Danielle's birthday is in late January, and her sister's is the following month. We were meeting with her family that night, um, and they did not know that we were even considering this. So when we showed up at dinner and told them, "Hi, there's going to be a baby in our home," they were all so shocked. The following morning, we had arranged for the exchange to take place at the Costco in University City. And so I pulled into Costco, got gas, and then pulled over to the parking lot where a kind lady then installed the car seat in my back seat. And I drove away with a 3-week-old baby in my car and no experience.
Clapping back there. And it was a surreal experience. 7 years of waiting, and then 10 days instead of 9 months. We had a baby in our home. And it was great the first few weeks, learning how to take care of a child and being up at night and bottles and all of that stuff. Our whole lives changed very quickly. And we thought, okay, so this is what's happening. We're foster parents. We might adopt her, we might not. That's another part of the story that we're still grappling with this current moment. And we thought, this is it. God builds families in unconventional ways, and this is how he's going to build our family, and this is our answer. And I think it was part of our answer. And then April 5th of 2025, I'm sitting with a 3-month-old baby and a positive pregnancy test for the first time in 7 years.
I mean, obviously we were elated, but remember our story began 7.5 years ago with a positive pregnancy test. So that didn't necessarily mean that we were out of the woods, but I just had this feeling that the Lord was saying, "I got you." And so now well, there's another kid coming.
We learned after 7 years of the loss of our first baby that God does keep his promises. His timing is perfect and his blessings abound.